knows probably the story that I'll never forget it, is where Paul and I decided to disobey our mother when she told us not to go up to this little swimming hole. It was probably stinky mud like the mud down here at the reservoir, and we were still in our school clothes because we'd just gotten home from school. We went up there and we pretty much got covered with mud all over on our clothes, and it was freezing cold outside, and so, but we had fun in the water swimming. I think we swing it out on a rope out into the water and stuff.
I thought you were after frogs.
Well, we could have been.
There may have been some frogs involved.
Where was this?
Up by
Up
the
behind the
Synodome.
Synodome. Up where Lucas's house was, probably. It was before their house was built. And so then we came home and our mom made us go out back and strip naked, and she sprayed us off with the hose. And it was ice cold. But
I still walk with a limp because of
our
that.
mother, she told us never to go there. We never go there again. After
It
that.
was only in February.
It was pretty darn cold.
Savannah?
Now, here's the memory with that. I remember one time we were going to a family reunion, I think it was, and there was a cooler parked behind the car. And now I'm going to give that.
Sophie!
I'm going to give a different one for that. Because it was kind of funny. I thought it was funny. It was in the, they used to have this lamp that was this big orange globe.
Yeah.
That
Like
hung
the
down
lake lamp,
in the kind of in between the living room and the dining room. Dad walked through there one day. He popped his head up. It had a little metal point thing on the end of it, and got him right on the top of his head. He grabbed it and he said, "Why does this dang thing always have to be here?"
Shook it
He
like
didn't
a
say
child.
dang.
I thought,
He said Terry's favorite.
But he shook it.
ooh.
That was funny. You gotta admit.
Grandpa, it's Grandpa.
The rage he took out on
Wait till
that.
I tell you what Grandma did before we were married and we were up.
Okay.
No, don't tell us any stories like that.
We don't want the skeletons coming out of the closet.
Okay.
Tired. Did you want to go
It's not that bad. It's just that I'm going to get even someday. It's not really a rebuttal. It just tells what El Diablo does when.
Did you just call Mom the devil?
Did I say
They
that?
didn't have the gender correct.
I don't speak Spanish, but
Here we go. We were going together, getting very serious. We were going to get married. We were engaged. She goes to Idaho with us, and my Uncle Orion, who is my mother's oldest brother, tells her to come around by the bathroom window where I was taking a bath and stick the hose through the window and turns on ice cold water. Comes right down on me, and I just about had a heart. That's why I have a bad heart.
I was in the pool! I was in the
And that's why these guys got. That's where she learned that. That's all I'll have to say. Now we're even.
Well, everybody knows the story when Mom broke the broom over my back.
What?
What?
For the kids.
No,
Because that was when I was going to tell too. That's pretty funny.
When I was about
This is
3
a
or
child
4.
We're going to document it right here.
No, I was probably 15 or 16.
No, you weren't that old.
A little
You're probably
louder.
12 and I was about 4.
I was thinking 12.
Somewhere between 7 and 16. And I can't remember what I did to make Mom mad. There were a lot of, it was kind of a blur, those teenage years. But I did something that made her mad. So Grandma was so mad at me that she got off of her broom that she'd been flying around the backyard.
I'm sorry.
And she took it and she literally broke it over my back. But what made her more angry is that I was laughing the whole time she was doing it. So,
But then you acted like it hurt you, and you came in the bedroom acting like you were crying and told me what you'd just done, and that Mom felt really bad
oh, I forgot that part.
because she felt really bad because she thought she'd hurt you, and she came in to apologize. I'm sorry, I lost my temper
really
and
didn't
stuff.
mean to break
And
it.
Paul was laughing. He was going,
What did you mean? You didn't mean to break my back, or you didn't mean to break the broom? How could you not mean to break something when you hit something? But on the other hand, I remember going to work with Mom. I don't remember so much old St. Benedict's, but I remember when she worked at the new St. Benedict's, I think it was a career day, she took us to work, and I remember thinking that was really neat, that she took us around, and we got to see the pharmacy and Sister Danielle and Pete, and name of Pete, and take us around. I remember that too. So, Dad, one time, Dad, this is when we first moved to the Riverdale house, and we had that old gray or whatever color carpet it was, and I remember Dad coming in the house, and back then we used to get our milk at a dairy, and they were big glass bottles. And Dad was kind of, I remember, I was watching TV as I rarely did as a child, and we didn't have remote control back then, so you had to sit there and just switch between the 3 channels, like this.
So Paul wore a spot in the carpet, right?
There's still a indention there. Anyway, Dad came in the door, he was whistling happy as a lark, and he was swinging the milk bottles. I had no idea why.
I was crazy.
He hit these 2-gallon milk jugs together, and they shattered. And I still remember this. It was like the 10 Commandments, this ocean of milk coming towards me.
I can still remember the sound of the glass too, because it had this almost a hollow, like someone had dropped a whole stack of plates. It was just this.
But I also remember, same thing, Dad, when we go over to his job at the Roy Branch or wherever he happened to be, whichever branch he happened to be working at, he always made us feel special. He'd always take us downstairs and get us a pop in the pop machine, and a couple times I remember he took me out to lunch. So I remember
And he always introduces you to everyone too.
Right. He's always proud that you were his kids, and so that's my 2 tidbits.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any rebuttal?
But one thing that I appreciated was Dad bought us all skis and took us skiing, and Mom would always make stuff, chocolate and chili or something. He always made stuff for us, and we'd go up there
Hot chocolate
skiing.
and chili.
I remember one time Grandpa went down the hill, and I don't know this exactly, maybe you guys know the story better, but he went too fast or did something funny and like did a great big beautiful flip. And these guys were like, "How'd you do that?"
I do that all the time.
And then I'll have to think about Grandma for a second, because there's so many. Anyway,
What about when she used to put us on top of the doors?
That was not everybody.
Oh,
That
yeah.
Okay,
had
I
to be
have one.
Jim.
No, you did that to me. I
remember
clearly
being on
remember
this,
being on top of the board, being frightened to death. Did you know that? She used to put us on top of the
Picture
door.
her lifting
And why do you
him
do
up
that to
on
our
top.
kids?
Yeah, you put them on the
Because I was so scarred.
That's why they were so good in church. She promised to put them up on the door.
No, she promised to take
Yeah.
a pound of flesh.
Grab that.
Yeah.
That's the spiritual story about Mom. That's how she kept us in line in church.
Oh, you forgot the other part.
Yeah, she'd flip us off too when we're sitting up at the sacrament table.
Okay, here's my mom's story.
Really?
I think you can all put yourself in this way, being teenagers who are very worried about your images. Well, we had an old red truck. What year was that, Dad?
49.
An old, you don't even know if I tell you what Sanford and Son is because you don't know Sanford and Son. But anyway, it was an old red, old, rusty, dented red truck. And is that the one where you rode us through the parade in, or is
No,
in the
no, that was in
Suburbans?
the green station wagon.
I'm
Chevy
embellishing.
station
I'm
wagon.
combining stories.
Ellie.
Well, she took pleasure in driving the truck, but I guess that's a different story. She took us in the station wagon. We were going over to the parade, 4th of July parade at Riverdale School.
We were a little
No,
late.
yeah. She doesn't go around the parade and park us somewhere. She pulls into one of the middle roads and gets in the middle of the parade. And we're all driving in our green station wagon in the parade.
And she's honking and waving at everyone. And
It was
so you just think that we've embarrassed you.
I've
Nothing.
not seen anything.
Nothing can compare to going on the parade in your family truckster.
It was like the Simons.
Lord, that is
speaking of the old red truck, remember she used to take us around to deliver newspapers, and we could stand on the side of the truck until she got pulled over. And then I guess I could tell the story when I broke my arm, since not everybody heard that. I said I guess I could tell the story of when I broke my arm. For those of you that have been to Grandma and Grandpa's church, the hill that goes up to the church, that wasn't paved. And it was just weeds and rocks and dirt. And we used to go to primary on Wednesdays after school. And we'd get up, There were hardly any homes around there, but the school bus would go right up to the church and let us off after school, and we'd get off the bus and go to primary. Well, after primary, I was following one of John's friends home, and he was ahead of me, and so I started running down this dirt hill, and I slipped and fell, and I landed on my elbow in the rocks and broke my arm. And I remember just not being able to feel my arm and not being able to move it. So I ran back to church screaming and bawling, and found Mom standing in the hallway by the library, or Grandma standing in the hall by the library. And I kept trying to get her attention, and she just kept kind of pushing me away. Oh, be quiet, I'm talking. And my arms broke in several places. And so she just kept trying to shoo me out the door, and so finally I drove her nuts enough to where she took me out to the car, and she grabbed a hold of me and set me up on the hood of the car, and my arm kind of crackled in her hand, and then she realized that I broke it. She thought I was just being a little ball baby.
And I held it. Unfortunately, I could hear it.
Question.
Grating.
Question. Who does not want people?
So for my story about Grandpa, Grandpa used to like to show off a bit in the car. We got the old Ford station wagon, 71. 71?
429.
Yeah.
429 V8
Ford LTD.
LTD. This car had more power than the space shuttle. And he used to, it didn't take very much persuading, but we used to say, Dad, show us some power. And he'd light those tires up without even thinking about it.
Dave rolled.
And then he used to do donuts in the church parking lots when it was snowy.
Dad, they don't think you.
We were in the parking lot of the 49th Ward in South Ogden.
Wasn't that the state clerk at the time, too?
I can't remember.
I think he was.
We were in the Suburban,
We're sitting up.
and this is in the days when we didn't wear seatbelts. Steve and I were in the back seat, or in the back
In the little
cargo area,
compartment.
and he's just doing donuts to beat the band, and he had a dry spot. The Suburban went up on two wheels, or at least it felt like it did. And Steve and I went bam and hit the side of the car, and then the toolbox hit us and
That toolbox took air, and that thing weighed a ton. It just went.
launched against the side of the Suburban.
All those kids' eyes, I think, were about that
But it did
big.
keep
They were
turning.
huge.
Was that a true story, Grandpa?
That is a true story.
Well, I remember the car, and I remember one night David and Paul come in, and they were really upset, and they says, we couldn't help it. And they drove off the side of the road by Coleman's with that big, and they drove the car right down in the bar pit, and they couldn't get it out. I had to call a wrecker at 2 o'clock in the morning to come pull it out. That's all I remember about that car.
He did say in Dad's defense, he said, "Are you hurt?" And then he got the bell down. No, Dave.
Not now.
Dave was quick to say that he blacked out,
Dave,
so that saved the
I
day.
fell asleep because we used to clean in the middle of the night. We had to clean this theater, and I was asleep, and next thing I knew, I felt the car kind of tumbling down the hill, and I said, "Dave, what happened?" He said, I think I blacked out."
Yeah.
But tell him, wasn't there some
That's a
holes
story I
that-
got when you woke me up.
Dave did or Steve?
Well, I did, because I
Dave.
remember seeing the mailboxes and everything, and then the next thing I know, we're laying on our sides.
Do you always snore when you black out?
If I'm blacked out.
What was Dad's response?
He didn't ask me if I was hurt. Remember, he said, I'm in the emergency room, and I'm like terrified. I'm in the emergency room, terrified, and my elbow's sliced open, and there's glass in my chin, and Dad's on the phone. He's like, dang it, Lorraine, use your head. Remember that? And the nurse, I was sobbing. And the nurse said, are you okay, sweetie? Do you want me to take this phone away from you? Is he upsetting you? And I'm like, no, it's just my dad. Sorry, Dad. But then when he got there, he was
That was a
nice.
good memory.
And he gave, and he gave me a blessing when he got there, so then it was better.
Gave her a Scotch blessing, didn't you, Dad?
I'll tell the story about Dad hitting his head on the chandelier.
Dave already did.
Oh, you
Yeah.
did?
How about when the highway patrolman told me what happened?
I don't know.
Were you putting
put your makeup on? And,
I
oh,
was
he's
just
trying to get on the freeway. And
She
you
hit
put
some
your
black
makeup
eyes.
On, you went right into a Russian olive tree.
The highway patrolman's not here. He's not part of our family. I can even remember if we were sick in the middle of the night and we asked him for a blessing. This was before he was ever a bishop. He got up and put a suit and tie and white shirt on. He would go in his bedroom and pray before he gives the blessing.
President Kimball always talked about how you should be dressed, or how you should look when you address the Lord, when you're looking at it in a state home.
So we always have the priesthood in our home. And you can tell by what your dads are like. They're like our dad. And then, Mom, I always remember Mom reading the Jesus the Christ. She'd always find stories in Jesus the Christ, and that was like her favorite book. She read it all the time. And I know she spent lots of time on her knees.
Don't cry.
Anyway, I don't remember what I was going to say. I just said that one.
Forgot that today.
Anyway, that's all it was.
Mom, are you fine?
Dad, I mean, I just wanted to add, I remember specifically one night when I was really sick and Dad gave me the blessing. I was thrown up and I'd never been so sick in my life, and he went in and he actually showered and everything and came out and he gave me the blessing, and I was able to fall asleep right after that. And I mean, I gained a very strong testimony of the power of the priesthood and how important it was to my father. But another time I remember, and this was multiple times too, whenever Dad would lose anything or something was really important, he'd get down on his knees and say a prayer and ask Heavenly Father for help. And I remember going in a couple of times and just seeing him on his knees praying, and that always meant a lot to me to see him doing that, because I knew that my friends' fathers, I could never picture them even praying, let alone being on their knees and praying, and that gave me a love for prayer and knowing that Heavenly Father will answer blessings, because I remember he was praying about something that he'd lost, and he looked and couldn't find it, and as soon as he went in and prayed, within 5 minutes after he was done with his prayer, he walked right to where it was at and picked it up. And so I thought, holy cow, that's cool, that's so powerful, you know, that prayer is like that. And then I remember with Mom that she's the one that taught us boys how to treat our wives, and told us how we needed to be gentlemen, and always open the door for them, and be kind, and treat them the best that we could, and if we didn't, that we were going to get into big trouble from them. So we've got very good parents that have taught us good things. Deej?
I had a companion that got real sick with E. coli or salmonella, and he woke up. I remember he was up at like 11, just thrown up and both ends going crazy, and I remember waking up to him just shivering. He was shivering so loud that that's what woke me up, and I leaned over and I was like, "Elder Jones, are you okay?" He's like, "No, I don't feel very good," and he was just sweating real hard. So I was like, "Okay, well, you know, I'll give you a blessing if you want one." So that's what I did. I got dressed, and the only reason I did that is because I saw my dad do that. And so maybe Grandpa doesn't know how big of an effect that had on generations on down. So.
talking about your mission president said.
His mission president came to help with the blessing.
No, he didn't come to help the blessing. He came to bring toilet paper because.
And he was there and was very impressed, and he gave that example for the whole.
Because I know our kids, or we've got neighbors that their kids have been sick at night and thrown up on the floor, and the mom has made them clean it up while they were sick. And I just sat there and thought, I mean, I just thought of that. Broke my heart.
Yeah, that's too bad.
Doctors' kids do that. I mean, doctors do it for kids.
That.
Well, the bad thing was, we had that surface carpeting. And you guys would come in and say, oh, and you'd make it right to the bathroom door, but not in on the bathroom floor, but on the carpet.
I don't think she missed 1 week of my home mission writing to me on my mission. So I always look forward to that every week. I knew I'd at least have a letter from Mom, and she would. Seems like if I remember, she would always give me a little tidbit from each sacrament meeting or state conference or whatever meeting. There was always something in there to keep me up to date on what was going on in the Word, and I appreciated that.
Can I add to that too? That I remember when she'd do that, she'd also. This is kind of the. When I was in the mission office, I remember my companions, I'd get her letter and read it, and they always wanted to know what my mom had just written to me. Because there was always an off-colored joke. And they were going, your mom is so funny. She dares write you that stuff?
Maybe she learned after.
I never did that. I never wrote.
Mom,
She said that she was really innocent when they first got married, that she'd hear jokes that at work the doctors would tell, and she'd come home and Dad would have to explain them to her. What they meant.
Well, if you didn't laugh at the jokes, then they really made fun of you.
She's not that innocent.
And Mom would laugh at the wrong spots.
And for Dad, as far as my mission goes, Dad did come to my farewell and homecoming. And I appreciated that.
But what about your slideshows?
Well, they're gone forever because they got ruined in the flood.
Now, but
But there's a record.
You never saw them.
You'll see them again. I can-
Dad, just to echo what Dave said, we're taught. I teach the deacons in church, and I'm always, telling how important it is to pray and so forth. But Dad always told us how important it was to pray, and as David said, I can't count the number of times I walked in their bedroom and Dad was on his knees praying, and Mom too, either praying together as a couple or praying individually, and that always made me feel. I mean, I could. What Dad said, I believed because he practiced what he preached. The other thing is, there were two things. The first one is when Dad was. How long were you a bishop? 5 years, something like that. When I went in for my bishop's interviews with Dad, it wasn't like he was my dad; he was my bishop, and there was always a clear distinction. It would be easy for you to sit down with your dad as your bishop and have just a dad chat and whatever. But Dad was discerning, and he was my bishop. I mean, and there was a clear distinction between the two. And the other thing is Father's blessings. I think I got my last Father's blessing probably a year ago or a year and a half ago. I average about one a year from Dad, and ever since I can remember, Dad has given me a blessing before school or going away to do something or make a choice, something with the job. And I've always appreciated that, and it's always been a great help for me, and I've always looked back on those and I've been very appreciative.
To add a little about me getting interviewed by him, I can remember when I was working, and some of the nurses would say, well, who do you go to for your temple recommend, for your interview? I said, my husband, my bishop. And they would say, but that's your husband. I said, no, it isn't. Because I was treated exactly like everybody else. I can also remember going up in was sitting in the clerk's office with the radio on while he was interviewing sisters in the ward, so that he wasn't ever there alone.
What's the church do for that? Does that change?
Well, we don't have clerk's offices that are right next to the bishop's office.
What do you do when you have to?
One time, John was very upset, I would say, because he had to go to seminary and he had to tell about the prophet Joseph Smith, about his life. And he asked me, where can I find all this? And I said, well, it's right in the scriptures. He tells it himself. Let me read it to you. So we sat down on the couch and I started reading what Joseph Smith said, his own words. And all of a sudden, I just had a real warm feeling, but it was a scary feeling because I didn't know what it was. And I think it was the Spirit bearing testimony to me. That Joseph Smith was a prophet. And when I told this to John, his eyes were about this big. And I don't know what happened when he went to seminary, but I know I benefited from that experience. But he would always come and ask me before anything, before he ever did anything. And that made me feel good that all my boys were that way. Even my daughter would come and ask me before they did anything that they questioned. I appreciated that. And I shouldn't say this in front of everybody, but before we were married, and you probably heard this, I felt I had a lot of traditions of the father that were going to play over into our marriage, and I knew she'd come from a very, very good home where their parents were close. And so we pray we'd have the best possible spirits come to our home, because I didn't think that I was good enough to be a good father. And now I've realized that's not the case, that Heavenly Father will answer your prayers no matter who you are, or where you've been, or what your circumstances are, because He loves everybody the same, even the people in the jails and the prisons that have made bad choices. He loves them just as much. And I found that to be true, and I suppose I went through that experience, so I'd learned that, because I feel that spirit now when I talk to these people, and I tell them that they're loved, and they come up, put their arms around Mom, they hug her and tell her how much they appreciate it. They can feel the spirit through her. I do the talking, but she's the one that generates the spirit. And so we feel, and we've always felt, that we were blessed with that prayer was answered. We never had real problems with our kids like some parents have had to. They go off and do crazy, stupid things and make their parents almost go nuts. We never had that problem. And so I think I have a lot of faith in Heavenly Father. And I think all my grandchildren should know that I was taught when I was just a little kid by my grandmother to pray. And one time she was sick, and my Aunt Rhea said, I was only about 4 or 5, and she said that I came in, well, maybe I was a little older than that, and I said I put my hands on her head and gave her a blessing, and I didn't know anything about the priesthood. I didn't know anything about giving blessings, except I had seen that done, and Grandma told my Aunt Rhea that she actually felt better after I've done that. And I have always felt little children are closer to our Father in heaven. And when I walk in a store and I look at a child and they're in a cart or somebody's pushing them, I make eye contact, and they always smile back at you. And sometimes they'll say hi, and that really tells me how innocent and pure they are.
Yeah.
What grandma was it that was sick?
What?
What grandma was sick?
My grandma Beckett. She's a little old English woman, and she had some rough times.
I knew exactly what I wanted to do when I grew up. I knew I wanted to go into nursing. I knew I wanted to be married in the temple. I knew I wanted a big family. And I knew the kind of a husband I wanted. And you've all heard us talk about that we went out on a blind date on a Friday night, April 22nd, 1960. And the next day, and I was a substitute on that blind date, the next day I was a bridesmaid up in Burley, and some of the other student nurses said, "How was your date last night? And did you like him?" And I said, "Yeah, I really did. Do you think you'll go out with him again?" And I remember saying, I bet I'll either have his ring or be pinned to him, which was what was done in those days. And the next day was Sunday, and he called and said, "Do you want to go out to sacrament meeting with me?" And so we did. And afterwards, we went over to his Uncle Curly and Aunt Gloria's, and they played guitars, and I thought anybody that liked cowboy music, bluegrass, was a little bit low on the IQ.
Thanks a lot. You weren't wrong.
That's what I tell people too.
It's telestial music. Where do we live? In a telestial kingdom right now, so it's okay here.
They
Good, I'm Mary.
were sitting there
Listen up, Mary.
just enthralled with this wonderful music, and they played one that was called Ruby. And I thought I was going to die. It's the most terrible song I still don't like it. But anyway, that
Why?
date, the third day after we met each other, we talked about getting married to each other. So we always say that he says I proposed to him, but I don't think it worked that way.
Well, it was meant to be that we both felt that
It
was
was just, there wasn't anybody else.
And by the way, there is a lady in our ward who married a guy named Newey, old Bishop Newey's son, and she's from back in Tennessee, and the Osmond brothers are her cousins. And I asked them about them, and she smiled and she says, "Yeah, what a great guy." So they're good, clean-cut guys, even though they sing that song. And there's nothing wrong with it. She starts out, "Ruby, Ruby, honey, are you mad at your man?" And then it goes into the song. I hope you didn't put that on the tape. That erase that.
Ruby, don't take your love to town, is that one?
No, it's not that one.
That's the most terrible song.
You got to hear it on the. They're good at it.
Yeah.
You hear it on the. Still got the record of the.
Hey,
It's
Grandma,
33 and 30.
Can you tell us some more like cheap dates, like sacrament? That's really beneficial for
The master of the cheap date.
Oh, here's a memory of Dad
We're not
though.
supposed to.
I remember Mom used to think that Dad was so wonderful because he would always bring her flowers home from work, and then when she found out where he was getting the flowers, he worked in the sporting goods
That
store.
only happened once.
It was right next to you made it sound like it happened all the time. That it was right next to a florist, and the flowers that they dumped out back, he'd go and get and bring home for her.
The guy would always stop and he'd say, "You guys want any of these flowers? They're still good." And I said, "Sure." So we all took them, and there wasn't anything wrong. And I couldn't see them dying and not being used. I'd hate to spend money on flowers, but since I've changed,
But you know
I
what?
don't go there.
But you know what? The thing is, though, is it's still the thought that counts. I think
Yeah.
that he brought home flowers to her because he could have said,
Brought me
No.
home.
Which one of us has not given our wives flowers from a cemetery, for example? The dead people don't know.
That's a great example. All your grandkids probably think that. I mean, all your kids. You don't have any grandkids.
I'm not going to say which sons this happened to, and this is the way that we remember how it happened. But like Paul said, they worked up in the theaters, they cleaned the parking lot for the drive-in, whatever. And one of the kids had a big dog and had a great big dog house. Well, got rid of the dog, we still had the dog house. And one day, Grandpa and I were outside, and we happened to see something inside the dog house. And we looked in there, and there was a stack of magazines. And now I don't remember the names of the magazines, but it was not the Children's Friend.
They were anatomy magazines, is that what you're saying?
I think so.
They're a lot tamer than whatever you see today, I'll tell you that.
No.
But they're still embarrassing.
So we took them in the house, and the punishment, we did absolutely nothing about it. We just put them on their beds with their Book of Mormon on the top.
What an object lesson.
That's not.
So did that happen while I was on my mission?
Yeah.
Because wasn't that Shasta or whatever that dog was called that John got from?
Took the magazines out of the doghouse and left the Book of Mormon in the doghouse.
No, I remember the Book of Mormon on the bed.
No, it wasn't.
She likes the bed part better, so let it stay.
Yeah, there.
Who knows where the magazine?
I heard it was angels.
We
Yeah,
did not
angels
tell
that
who
put
it
them on
was
the
that
bed.
did this.
I'm not gonna say Memorial Day, and we had to pull into a parking lot because and spend the first night because we couldn't get into the site that we wanted. But so we camped out of this parking lot, and then the next morning we got up and we were starting to get breakfast, and we were ready to eat breakfast, and we couldn't find Grandpa. Oh, sorry, it was lunch. I apologize. So we're calling him, and he didn't come in, and so finally we were getting ready to go out and look for him, and he comes up to the trailer door, and he made up this story that he was out doing something else, but he had dark chocolate all over his fingers.
All
over his face. He looked like Augustus.
Let me in, I'm starving.
My dad used to do that.
But he seriously had chocolate all over his face. He had been out binging on dark
It
chocolate.
had melted in the car, and he was trying to clean it up, and he claims he was looking for something.
Can I tell another
Looking for
chocolate
Mr.
story about
Goodbar.
Grandpa?
That was
When
awesome.
we went to pick Steve up from his mission, I can't remember the circumstances, but we needed to have a council. We needed to have a family council to talk about our itinerary. So we were in some little podunk town in Germany. It was raining. It was night. Steve, Melissa, myself, and Mom and Dad were there. And Dad, of course, we were into the meeting 30 seconds and he was already asleep. So the meeting probably lasted 15 minutes, and Dad didn't get any of it. But right at the very end, right when we were kind of wrapping things up, he woke out of his sleep. Chocolate! Are you sure? Remember that? Chocolate!
I don't remember that.
I don't remember, but I believe
Oh, I
Melissa, did it happen?
Absolutely.
But German chocolate,
one of my favorite
Belgian
stories.
chocolate.
it. And ice cream.
I think he had overdosed or something.
I've got a funny story too. When we went over there with him, when we were going through the little toll route, heading into Paris, you stop about every 10 miles, and so this is a story for Mom. When I was in France,
Yeah.
because that's how Mom has to tell every story, and but anyway, we were going through the toll booths, and we were giving them the we had other foreign money that we wanted to get rid of, and the French aren't the friendliest people in the world, and so I was just kind of listening to the way that they were talking. I thought, well, on my mission, they taught us how to just mimic what the people are saying, listen to them, and then mimic, say back to them what they're saying, and that's how you learn to speak the language. And so we'd go through, and then so I'd pull up, and I just with a smile say au revoir, and they'd say au revoir, and they were really friendly and say something, and I'd give them the money, and then when we'd leave, I'd say bonjour, and they'd say bonjour, They were really nice, and we got through about $15 cheaper than Dad did, but Dad was going through playing the American, saying, "Do you speak English?" And he thought that if he yelled it really loud,
Bonjour when you say hello, au revoir when you say goodbye.
whatever.
Well, they thought he was retarded. That's why.
I still got through cheaper than you did, so it didn't really matter. And then we were heading back out, and Dad had a little sign for us that we'd know when we had to pull over so that he could go to the bathroom. He'd flash his lights at us, and the kids were like getting really frustrated. They're going, "We're never going to get there. Grandpa has to stop again. Does he have to go to the bathroom again?" Well, coming back out of there, we had gone for like 20 minutes. I mean, it was a real long time, it seemed like. And we didn't see him flash his lights, and we were going, man, he's doing really well. We finally got up this spot and pulled off and stopped, and he came up and he goes, he had like tears in his eyes. And he was saying, "What are you doing? You're trying to kill me. I've been flashing my lights for the last 20 miles. And Mom said that she actually felt really bad for him because he was in pain.
Was he hitting the wrong button or what happened?
I don't know. I didn't ever see him flash his lights.
You remember.
You got him.
You remember whether it was Germany or Austria or wherever.
You remember that, Dad?
Younger kids, and it was so fun to go over there, and they always made me feel so welcome. And so I would go to work really early in the morning. I worked at Hill Air Force Base, and one morning I went to work, and there was this, I thought it was like a transient, which is like a hobo or something, and standing in their front yard by their tree, and he had this big poncho on, and he was bald, and I thought, what in the world? Unshaven, and back then Grandpa used to wear a toupee, and that's all I knew him. I thought he had a lot of hair, and so I always thought, oh, Brother Beckett has a head full of hair. So I saw this person out there with a bald head, so I called him that day and said, "You better be careful, there was a transient out in your yard this morning at 5:30 in the morning. I think he's sleeping under your tree or something."
He was doing exercises or something.
I thought it was a homeless guy.
Well, I think I went out and set the water or something.
I was so embarrassed, but I just thought I better marry into that family because that was pretty cool.
I thought you were. And so he wanted, what did you want me to buy?
Cigarettes?
Popsicle or some dumb thing. So I pulled into like a 7-Eleven and said, now you stay there. Just stay right there and I'll be right back. So I got out of the car, went in, bought the stuff, came back, and Paul was gone. Now this is a kid who had just been under anesthesia. And he was gone. And I didn't know where he was. And where were you, Paul?
Hiding behind the building.
Scared me to death.
She got me back though. Then she took me home, and then she was supposed to go get the pain medicine. I don't know where she went. I think that was the last time I actually cried because of pain. I was in so much pain.
Wait,
Well,
he
Well,
was
listen to-
where?
It took an hour to get my pain medicine.
Was it John that had
You
all
put
his
me
wisdom teeth
through
pulled at the same time?
lots of pain.
John had a whole bunch of teeth at the same time.
It's a
I
tie.
can't hear you, Rachel.
We were at Jim and Christy's house, and Grandpa decided he was gonna try to bop it. So we took it, and the music started, and he just started going. And he wasn't pushing any of the buttons. And Stop was like, "You lose," and he's like, "I lost." He was just completely surprised. He just like did it, so he goes.
I missed all that. What was it?
It's before you were making fun of him because it was a stupid game, and